Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, Arwin, Refracted Curvature, the Adam Meakin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hey, good morning.
Good afternoon, everyone.
What's up?
Guy.
Yeah, Nathan's a little late because he was grilling somebody with a downward bias.
No, it's not this guy, because this guy's also going down.
What? I said downward bias. What?
It's also relative. Relative to you.
When things move left, there is a measurable amount of right in them. Just so you guys know.
Yeah, things are still accelerating down even if they're moving up, right?
That's nonsense. Just the guy who claimed it went for a coffee at the point of concession. Claimed I wasn't listening to his new introduction of new arguments in regards to resistance. That hadn't been aired, hadn't been addressed, certainly hadn't been conceded. Anyway, moving on to the actual live show. Any evidence for physical geometric spheroid horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
They never claim the geometric horizon.
They do. It's
Except
in the
when
Earth curve
boats
maths.
go over the curve, then it is one.
That's the geometric horizon. It's on screen right now. This point that is claimed to have obscured the boat from view when it goes over the hump, that would be your geometric horizon in Muppet Vision. Perspective exclusive, of course. The boat wouldn't be that size at that scale, but that's ignored in Muppet Vision Earth curve maths, where the geometric physical spheroid horizon is depicted on screen as you see it now as a physical obstruction if you're looking at the side of your own head and you ignore perspective.
Yeah, and on top of that, we also get the straw man claim that on a flat Earth, things don't disappear. You could just see them forever because they're in a straight line of sight and not obscured by the curve, which is completely ridiculous. But they still bring it up, though.
Actually, a useful picture for the next question I'm going to ask. Any evidence you can have a curved adjacent whilst acquiring an elevation angle?
Yeah, I don't think a sextant would work on a surface like that, would it?
No, it would not. And if you claim that you are going to acquire a chord line, and this line, if you wanted to call it that, a chord line, then you'd need an R value, and they don't have that. It's debunked by the Black Swan.
It's this one's a bit interesting, Nathan, because with all the others, we say you're going to need R for that. But I think in this one, you're going to have to say to him, you cannot have an R for that.
Oh, it's why it's my favourite. So I'll just break down what Adam said. Beautiful point, by the way. Thank you, Adam. So in most, if not all instances, I typically said 99.9% of cases they will assume the Earth is a sphere before they do anything else. If the Earth's a sphere, kind of like in the pre-show. Well, if there is a downward bias, you just assume the thing you're trying to prove. Well, in this instance, you cannot have a curved adjacent when acquiring an elevation angle. Therefore, you're gonna need a flat Earth for that angle. So before they go on to assume R and move that angle measured at the surface to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, as they normally do, they first have to measure the angle. And they're going to need two straight lines for that. Or to put it another way, they can't beg the question of a sphere first. They have to assume it's flat to measure the angle. And then they assume it's a sphere. So they're going to need a flat plane for that angle. Correct, Adam?
Well, that destroys the celestial sphere, any claim of angular relationships in the sky, then, for them, doesn't it?
For them it does, yeah, because none of them work on a spherical surface because they haven't got a straight line to measure the angle that they'll be claiming. When they move it through a degree measurement that comes from the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, that has nothing to do with the actual alignment of what you're measuring on the surface. And what you're measuring is an angle, and that's 2 straight lines. Flat Earth required, you're going to need a flat plane for that.
Nathan, even if they go with their presupposed center of the Earth and presupposed sun coming in parallel light, when they go to put it on the Mercator map, guess what's going to happen? Teardrop circle of equal altitudes. It doesn't even work with their big in the question, as Rob Durham showed.
Indeed, in Rob Durham's video, he shows that you take a claim to be projection of a sphere Earth onto a flat cylindrical map that's then laid out flat. Now that leaves you with extra bits of surface on that flat square map or flat rectangular map called the Mercator projection in this instance. Now when you do your circles of equal altitude and plot them with a compass onto the map to draw where you are and figure it out with celestial navigation, you're just drawing a circle. That's how it works. Now when you transpose those circles back onto a spherical surface, you don't have circles anymore. They become teardrops. So it doesn't work. The reverse of the claim to be engineering from a sphere doesn't work when you put it back on, and it must work if we're on a sphere. We're just not. Not to mention the fact that they couldn't acquire any of those angles to measure in the first instance. They wouldn't be able to acquire the GP position because it wouldn't be parallel to their position. Or a straight line from the surface if they're on the surface.
So they always
Also
use
doesn't-
that type of map then? They always use that type of map for that process? That was kind of the remaining question for me. Like,
They
do they
need a
always
flat-
use that map for the process?
They need a map with
Rectangular?
longitude. They need a map with longitude, latitude lines. What kind of map do you think they have to use? Called the
Rectangular.
Yeah, and it's usually the Mercator map.
All right. So they actually use that, it works, but then when you fold it into a ball, yeah, then it doesn't work. That's pretty astounding.
On screen now for the audience. So you can see that this red line actually is a demonstration of how far off, because you can see just on screen it comes to a point. This is not a circle, this is a teardrop shape, and it gets more and more exaggerated as you go further north or south from the equator. The only place, in fact, you will get a perfect circle is at the equator. But none of these circles match back onto the sphere, as they absolutely must if we're on a sphere.
And it also doesn't
but-
match on the AE map either.
No. Well, that doesn't surprise me, though, because of the way that that's projected. So you wouldn't expect it to work in that way. The azimuth equidistant projection's not designed to do that. It's only designed to work from the centre out.
Right, but my focus is a circle map. It will never work because there's no parallel lines there.
Right. But that would
Okay.
be a problem if we had some near and dear association to the azimuthal equidistant projection, which I don't. I don't know about you. I don't have that problem.
I-
Oh well, that's a
I
shame.
don't have that.
Plenty more
I don't
maps
have
out
that
there.
problem either.
The,
Yeah,
Oh.
that's a problem if you've got a reification of the azimuthal equidistant projection.
the problem here is curved surface, because if you look at it in one way, which would be example A, if you believe you live on a globe and the sextant that you're using is off of a curved surface, it makes the sextant inoperable because sextant can't work without 2 straight lines forming a corner, which gives you a vertex to get an angle. So boom, they're out there. If you say, well, actually, we believe that when we do that thing from the surface with the sextant, we're actually going from the center of the Earth to the center of the moon, sun, and other bodies. You say, oh, okay. So even if we go there and take the measurement from the center of the Earth and you project it from the center of the Earth to the surface of a curved surface, you got teardrop circle of equal altitude, so it doesn't work that way either. No matter which way, a curved surface cannot give you a circle of equal altitude and the correct zenith distance.
Yeah, curved surface.
Amazing.
A circle's 2D. It's never going to work on a spherical surface with a curve. It has a bent radius then. No such thing as bent radii. You can't get this to work on a sphere. It has to be a flat plane to measure the angle. It has to be a flat plane in terms of the map projection. It has to be a flat plane in terms of acquisition of the angle at the GP position to do triangulation. This is a flat Earth stone cold proof. It's an annihilation of the globe because it simply cannot function. And if they try to make it function, you're going to need a flat plane for it.
So why
I
don't we
agree.
get this out? Why don't we get this out, write it up, get it out, and get it into the schooling system? Get
Yeah,
it into
right,
somewhere.
man.
Hold on.
I'll tell you why.
Hold on. What's Neil proposing we do? Get it out. What do you mean? We are getting it out. This is live right now. 75 people are watching.
I agree, and there should be 75,000 people watching, Nathan. But there's got to be a way that we could write this up somehow and putting it as education. Why can't it go to the school system? It's true, right?
It could be inserted like a navigation class or something, right? Why not? But yeah, you'd have
I don't
to
care what
construct a
class.
curriculum for that. Then maybe it could work. But anyway,
is
I
a-
would like to
this
make
is
another
a-
point, if
hold
I
on.
may.
How you interact or how you propose Big Brother should interact with your children in the school system, that's a completely different issue as far as I'm concerned.
No.
Big Brother's
No,
a
I'm saying this is education.
No, Big
Yeah,
Brother
and
and
the
its
current-
comprehensive education has a spherical structure to it. The reification of Sphere Earth is part of the comprehensive education system in the Western world. Now, if you're saying, well, that's not acceptable, well, do the other thing.
Well, seriously, you could make a curriculum out of it just so that somebody
I
could
agree.
take it.
Right, for homeschoolers maybe, but you got to get
Yeah,
through
exactly.
the gate. But you got to get through the gatekeepers for the national.
Yeah,
this
because
is-
a
hold
lot
on,
of
hold on,
people
this
will
is
be
a-
out of jobs.
This is a perfect example of me saying, your want to project what you know out onto the world is the thing that's holding you back in terms of your peace of mind generally and the people around you seeing you as Fonz. Yeah, this is you saying,
No.
I am not cool with this. It must be the case that everyone
No.
else's children know the information the way I know it, and this is the thing that they should be knowing so they know it's flat. That just says to me you're not cool with it.
No, I'm saying this is groundbreaking. So why are we not breaking the ground?
I just told you because
I don't
We
understand.
are.
I just literally told him. I'll just say it again. Because Big Brother's comprehensive education system is a heliocentric based system, Neil. I just told you that.
You're misunderstanding me. Forget it.
Oh my God. Twice in one show. Well, there you go. I just don't
A lot of
understand.
people will be out of a
saying-
lot of jobs.
I'm just saying, this is like, as you're explaining it, I'm seeing the whole thing, and I just think that more people should know about it.
Well,
That's
what's
all. It's
stopping
true.
you,
Okay,
Neil?
okay.
What's stopping you?
Right.
I'm gonna write it up. I am, and I'm gonna go to the
Exactly.
school system, and I'm gonna say, this is what's going on. This is the truth. Stop teaching this bullshit globe that I gotta hear on TV every freaking time I'm trying to
that's
watch
the-
a
no, no, no.
football game.
No, no.
I gotta see commercials. It's for
No, stop. That's the bit that you're not cool with. That's where you're not being like Fonz, my friend. Got to be more like Fonz. Be cool. Right. No. Don't go around dictating that everybody else needs to see it your way. That's how it is.
It's
Yeah?
not my way. It's the way.
At the moment, it's you're not understanding what I'm trying to put down.
You need to choose the highway, Neil.
Every day.
Let me
we
give you
have
an
a
example.
show.
Let me just give you an example, 10th. Right. The education system in this regard is no different to any other service that you pay for. You are paying for it. And it's a service, right? So let's compare it to McDonald's. Do McDonald's not realise that flame grilling the meat is miles better for the taste? Everyone should know about this. Everyone in the restaurant. Oi, everyone listen up in McDonald's.
No,
they should be
that's a
flame
bad
grilling.
illustration. No. That's a bad
So let's make it
illustration.
real meat
We're
first.
talking about education, not about hamburgers. We're talking about educating.
Health,
the youth.
education, it's a comparison, Neil. In that respect, it's taste, not even health. Just flat out food, very important. Everyone's got to eat it, right? If you don't, you die. In many ways, more
There's
important than the
education for
education.
cooking.
I can argue it easy as a parallel. My point is, Neil, that you're standing in somebody that's structured a service and offered it. Now you're paying for it whether you want to do it or not. But that's not the point. You can do the other thing if you choose to.
I'd like to make an argument for why heliocentrism has a purpose within society. And if I can make that purpose, then would you accept that as being a reason to teach it, Neil?
I know where you're going. You think it's keeping everybody calm and tame.
Don't put words in his mouth. He hasn't
What?
told
Why
us
would
yet.
you think
He
that?
hasn't told us yet. Go ahead, John. Let's hear it.
He's mentioned it before.
Well, not that it keeps it calm and tame, but just moments ago, we had a flat earther being unreasonable, right? So it's not the natural inclination of people to be reasonable when paradigms are challenged, right?
Agreed.
Okay.
People don't like changing stories. That's right.
Look, John's calm, collected measures, not going to be interrupted by everyone. Go ahead, John. Let's just get to the end of this point. I want to hear it.
Well, and we know that in society, those with what would you call it? Sociopathic tendencies rise to power because that's what it requires of you.
I'd say psychopathic, but carry on.
What good would it do for everyone in the world to know that we're in a contained system on a flat Earth for everyone else?
Truth matters.
That's not what he asked.
Well, people would stop investing and be less
you,
interested
Owen.
in space stuff.
That's not what he asked.
Right?
That's not what he asked. That's not what he asked, Neil. What benefit would
Okay,
it
what
serve?
good did it do for you? What did it benefit you?
Oh, me? Or are you asking John?
Both of you.
No, I'm not involved. John's sampled. Go ahead, John, if you want to answer that.
Well, I do think it keeps people calm when they believe they have answers.
What I tell you.
But that's not what I'm saying. Because I don't think that everything that happens in this reality we experience is everything that can happen. And it might be better off for everything else if we just stayed where we're at.
No, I don't. I do not accept that. You're thinking that there's going to be total anarchy. No, there'll be people coming to the truth and then questioning, okay, why were we taught that Earth is a sphere and that we're in a solar system and that those lights in the skies are planets? Why were we told that the sun was 93 million miles away? It would just be inquiry.
That's
that
terrible.
Would be a reasonable.
That's terrible.
That would be a reasonable position to take, but do you really think people would behave that way? If they just started teaching tomorrow that the Earth was flat in school, do you really believe that everybody would be like, well, just forget about all that NASA stuff. Let's stare at the sky now.
No, it's totally unacceptable for the people who control us. Absolutely unacceptable that anybody says anything starting why. No, that's definitely not why they give you a comprehensive education. Not so you can go around questioning stuff. On the contrary, Neil. So you're saying that offering this information in a comprehensive structure would potentially lead all of the people in the comprehensive structure to start asking questions of the people who control them. This is definitely not going to happen, Neil.
Well, then you might as well. Then you might as well teach kids that 2 and 2 is 4, 3 and 3 is. 2 and 2 is 5, 3 and 3 is 9, and 8 times 9 is 152.
Okay, well, do that then, Neil. Do that then.
What do you think the purpose of this show and other shows like this are? And let's just stay on this show 5 days a week. What's the purpose of this show 5 days a week?
That's a very good point. Please smash the super chat to support this channel.
And support Nathan. To educate and support.
Okay, so yeah, that answered it. So the purpose of this show is to educate and show people what reality is, what geometry is, what our Earth is. Now, if someone
That
tunes
comes
in,
secondary to smashing
Hang-
super chats, hitting
No.
PayPal links, keeping me in a roof.
well, the show must survive. So yes, hit the super chat. But the point I'm trying to make here is that we are doing the right thing here. We are questioning the model. We're breaking its back. It can't survive. It's died already 10 times over. And you think just because we've proved that we can just insert it in the whole public education system in just one fell swoop. No, it's not going to happen. What's going to happen is more people are turning to the logic and the critical arguments and becoming flat earthers. Okay. And that's how we grow. Once that number rises, then things and people in position can cause things. But right now, there's so much cognitive dissonance just within people who know me. That it's like they avoid me. Well, that whole thing has to change, where they come and say, you know what? 10 of my friends are just like you. I'm going to look into this now. That's the moment we're waiting for. Because right now I'm the odd man out.
Exactly. That, and I do have Lamborghini payments to cover.
How many people you say are watching the show, Nathan?
Just under 100 at the
100
moment.
right now.
Not fast enough. It's got to be something we could do.
Nathan, you could have had a V8.
Please share the show. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Ah,
Yeah, according to
could've-
schools, it's 93 million miles away. Might as well just stay with it then.
that's very helpful, Neil. Very helpful.
You can't even measure.
What do you suggest
an
we do?
angle
We,
to it.
we start a military and conquer the world so we could force everybody to think the truth?
No, that's not what
Well,
I said.
what else then?
Yeah, he's starting to sound a bit like Anakin Skywalker.
Construct it. Adam, you could do it. Put a paper together and present it somewhere. I don't know. You are the smart ones. I'm just a construction worker that sees the truth and wants it spread. What's the problem with that?
So
Why am I
spread
getting
it.
a hard time?
So
I
spread
do.
it. Okay, that's it. Everyone is spreading it. Next.
Right. Everybody wants to be like Han and just go, yeah, Sodom. Let's go. Let's sort this out on our own and not concern ourselves too much with them.
I don't. Back to the question about the sun. I don't think you can even measure an angle to it to assert that you have a radius to get a 93 million mile sun now.
Right, you're going to need R for that, and we've debunked it with the black swan.
No, they can't even get to R now because they can't measure the angle to the sun as it moves across the sky.
That's correct. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
We don't expect to see Coriolis deviation.
No, not the last time I shot my gun at the gun range. I didn't aim 300 feet to the right, expecting my target to turn there.
I've not done this one for a while. I've got the opposite. The Michelson-Gale observation. Did a simple bit of apparatus set up to observe the stars and differentiate by the path of light through a water-filled telescope to alter the rate to see whether it was the Earth that was moving or the stars that was moving. From that observation, it became obvious that it was the stars that were moving and not the Earth. So a good bit of logic there to oppose that suggestion that we're rotating.
Wasn't that Michael Bowden as opposed to Michelson-Gale?
Bowden's the guy that reads it. He's the old geocentric
I know.
Christian dude, Malcolm Bowden. He reads a lot of good stuff because he's not a flat earther, but he's geocentric based. But yeah, he's the one that highlights that, and he's like a Sunday school teacher, and an old pastor reading it out. It's which he is, I think.
Just to give
Adam,
some
is that Aries failure?
Aries failure, yeah.
That's the one for Einstein, isn't it?
No. Aries failure is where you take a telescope and then you point it at the compensatory degree angle for the rotation of the Earth. Now, if the Earth is moving and then you've tilted the telescope full of water correctly, then the light will still reach the lens. But if Earth's turning beneath it, then the telescope moves as the path of light travels through the slowed down motion in the water, and it'll hit the sides and you won't see it. So if you can still see it, then you've got the stars moving because it doesn't make any difference. It travels through the light. It travels slower through the water, but you still see it. Whereas if you don't, i.e. the telescope's moving along the ground, then the slowing down of the path of the light will mean that you no longer see it. That's Aries failure. Shout out to Sacred Knowledge, aka Universe, that you are a slave. That's from Matrix, isn't it? Yeah, that's the truth. That's what Morpheus tells Neo when he asks him, what is the truth? The truth is that you are a slave born into bondage. Well, yeah, that's true. And part
There's
of
a
that
new
bondage,
Matrix coming out.
part of the bondage is the education system, or the general Western world society that you're exposed to when you're discussing these sorts of things after your Western world education. That's the bondage described by Morpheus.
That analogy has an argument to it too, though.
Bondage analogy? What are you talking about? Globe-shaped butt plugs or something?
No, no, you're in bondage to your creator.
Well, that depends on how you look at it.
Well, yeah, exactly. This is where we come back to what does it matter in terms of John. This is kind of ruining his own point here. But what's your allegiance to if the ontological primitives are answered incorrectly and nature created it all? Well, then you're a slave to the infinite vastness of nothing. Just the nature itself. That's what you're a slave to. But that's a bait and switch, isn't it? Because you're not a slave to nature. You're a slave to men. It's a complete lie.
But in the Matrix analogy, it wasn't men. It was a source that they spoke about.
Yeah, the psychopathic control grid.
That's not the source, Nathan. You know that.
The source is just the psychopathic control grid, and they're just giving it some shiny light at the centre of it to make it more dramatic. But Thomas Sheridan talks about the psychopathic control grid all the time. He even calls it the Matrix. Matrix just means womb. That's all it means. It means you're inside something, encompassed by it. Well, we are encompassed by the control system of the Western world society. That's men. That's not machines, but that's how the analogy puts it in the Matrix. A slave to bondage in a very literal sense when you've got pipes shoved down your throat in a pod. Well, no, in a very metaphorical sense, we are slaves to the society we live in. Now, how much you choose to take part in that bondage is actually, to a certain degree, under your control. Sometimes you have to put the straw man coat on, sometimes you can take it off. Oops, I forgot to say Neo, says Sacred Knowledge, aka Universe. Yeah, I knew what you meant, though. We talk about the Matrix a lot here. Thank you very much for the super chats. Really appreciate the support.
I popped the link to Aries Failure in there, and it's got a clip for the Malcolm Bowden description as well. So it's in the chat if anyone wants it.
Oh, brilliant. You posted it in the live stream chat.
Yeah.
Have you got
my
it?
feet core, but it's
You a mod?
it's gone.
Oh, yes, there you are. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Gas go down, go boom boom.
No,
But it
doesn't.
goes in all directions, but it still goes down, go boom boom because of something electric or whatever.
That's where we rounded out the pre-show. How much downward bias does a gas particle moving up have?
Depends on his education.
I've got to get a cup of coffee, Arwin. It's terribly stressful, your response to that question that didn't come.
Well, things moving left have a measurable right, right?
Right?
Something goes right.
Yeah, it's a negative right value.
There you go.
Negative right value. So kind of the antithesis of claiming that it's got a right when it's going left would be a negative left. Definitely
Yeah.
not left.
Did the Rumpus use that?
I don't know.
Rumpus was the one that said, yeah, I know it's moving up, but it's still accelerating down. That was his thing. It was amazing.
Yeah, we're getting it now from both sides. We're getting it from flat earthers as well.
That's right. Bob Nodell's legacy is using Rumpus arguments. Isn't that just special?
Well, isn't the whole idea of the dielectric acceleration kind of created in the minds of Globers to begin with? Like, that's where they've got this idea from, was from Globers who pushed it out there. So
Yeah.
there's no surprise there.
Electric Universe Globers It's very much a heliocentric notion. Yes, correct. Never mind. Not our problem. Unless it comes our way and then it becomes our problem. And I have to react to it as it did in the pre-show.
It's still weird though, because it still goes that whole idea, downward bias, goes under the assumption that gravity is a force when it's not. So it's really odd that they took this direction.
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
More than likely than not that you're going to need R for that.
Maybe email-based hypothesis.
When they're describing their phenomenon, they will use an R value.
Yes, that's true. They're going to need R for a presuppositional description in astrophysics. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon in the first place?
There was somebody in my chat today trolling with actually believing the columns of gas thing again. They really think that now. It's like it just manifested. The ridiculous notion that is just blatantly wrong has manifested in their minds now as the go-to truth. They really believe it.
Well, if gas falls down, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to move on to the next housekeeping question, but no, gas doesn't fall down. Go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. If gas falls down, then you can justify a downward bias, but that's not what gas does. So that's why they're doing their columns of air, pushing things down.
Every time this comes up, Adam gives a really beautiful description of how weather systems work and operate, but you can take those notions which are based in entropy and require containment. Just trying to think of all the things Adam summarizes while he does it better than I'm now doing it. You don't have this reification into columns, layers. None of that's true. You're watching a process in action. When you describe a weather front, it's not some wall moving across. Go ahead, Adam. I'm butchering it anyway.
Well, the reification really is when we use the term fluid dynamics with a gas. And we do that because it does have a kind of fluid dynamics to it, that pressure system, not the individual gas. If we were to try and work out the individual gases, molecules' behavior at the pressure boundaries, it just becomes insane, as you can imagine, the computation. So what we do say is it approximates to fluid dynamics, and that's how we describe the way different pressure systems interact with each other, whether that's meteorologically or in pharmaceutics and stuff. We're still going to use that reification for want of a better phrase, because we know it's not a fluid. We know it's not actually acting like a fluid, but the simplest way to mathematically describe it is like a fluid. Because to try and this is the difference, you see, fluids act like fluids and all the molecules act like a fluid, but gases act a bit like fluids when they've got different pressure systems, but they don't, because each individual gas molecule is behaving as it always does, like a gas molecule. It's moving freely in all directions. So it's this interface of the boundary layers where this approximation to fluid dynamics comes in.
Can I ask something? Because I kind of, from what I've seen out there, I think that gas, when it's still in its concentrated form, does really act kind of like a fluid, but it never lasts. It always over time mixes in, and then those elements, those traits stop, right?
Yeah, so at the boundary, when you see these CO2s, what have you got? You've got one lovely mix of air, and then you've got this dense concentration of a single substance, CO2, for example, yeah? Well, this is where it's acting like a fluid at that boundary layer, yeah? Until, see, what's happening is it's dissolving, isn't it? As well as thingy, yeah? And
Both ways, one in the other in the
No,
one.
not yeah, but a much. If you think about, you've got that dense CO2 cloud. Yeah, it's harder for the air to penetrate into it. Yeah, so the entropy is going to go the other way, isn't it? Because the pressure goes from high to low. Yeah, that's the way entropy is going to resolve. Eventually, stuff will get in the middle, but the way it's going to do is it's the higher pressure system is going to eventually diffuse into the lower, and then it's all going to become one.
Right, that's the direction.
Yeah.
But still, so it does kind of work like a fluid in a concentrated form versus other gases. But here's the issue, and we all know this by now, but just state it anyway. That tiny little property in its concentrated form is then like magnified and made into the assumption that that gas can actually sit like liquid versus gas, and that would explain supposedly how it's just sitting next to space. But that never happens, because any fluid situation only happens because the gas pressure is stable enough, right, to do that, versus the other gas in that same container. Because if it's just open, it's all just going to explode in all directions every single time. Doesn't matter. And even liquids do that. Like water evaporates if it's not contained, right?
It's a reification, Owen, I would say, of the pressure system behavior. As we see this, we can visualize it like with the CO2 pour, etc. So reification of that into us suddenly thinking that the gas molecules individually are behaving in a different manner. That's the point of confusion, I think. I think people suddenly think the gas molecules as individuals are doing something different, going down, go boom, boom. They're not. They're not. When we're looking at these things, we're describing pressure systems, not individual gas molecule behavior. That doesn't change.
Right. But I always found it the most ironic part that they basically straw man the fluid to act like liquid, but they still overlook that if you put a water in a vacuum, it's going to evaporate, right? They know that it does that. So why would they assume that gas would be kind of like a liquid because it's a fluid, and then not do that versus a vacuum of space? That's the part where really the suspension of disbelief has to like prevent you from seeing that. Right?
Yeah, I think everyone's pondering it, Owen. Just, yeah, an excellent summary from both you and Nazem.
Well, it makes me think about the guy at work who everybody laughed out of the room when he talked about taking all the tops off of the gas containers to save money for the company. You know, his education failed him at that moment. You know, but you can kind of see why it does if you believe that there's a downward bias to gas.
That is silly. I don't know why they keep pushing that. Oh, I do know why.
Well, that's funny because the lid is on the top. So if there's a downward bias, why is the lid on top and not towards the bottom?
But I don't understand why they're not understanding the fact that all vectors means all vectors. So then there's no downward bias. I don't understand what they're not putting together.
It's either near or there.
Do you want me to do it for you, Neil? Let's just try it. You don't understand if I assume a downward bias, blah, 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 blah. There you go.
They want space. They want space. They need space.
Well, that is the
Yeah,
origin of the
they
argument.
need gravity to work. They need gravity to work for everything else to work.
Correct. They need their space. They're a bunch of Ken Wheeler fans.
Work, you say? That sounds like action. That sounds like a force. It doesn't do anything, though. It's just a description of something that doesn't actually really happen in the real world, only in a fictional medium.
Well, when a person doesn't concede, it says to me that they're a religious zealot.
I don't know about. Sometimes it's just people. It's easier to lie to somebody than to convince them they've been lied to.
Is that Mark Twain?
Yeah, I think it is.
Or it could be pride too, not wanting to be wrong.
I just looked it up. It's actually Popeye the Sailor Man.
Well, blow me down.
Well, I mean, it is pride because the moment you claim it, nobody wants to be wrong. That's just, who wants to be wrong about everything they say, or anything they say.
Sin
So there is a
cleanser
pride
dies
element to
slow.
it.
No. Sin cleanser dies slow, and I can name a few more. They're all Ken Wheeler Muppets.
Oh, we've got Harp and Sin Cleanser here.
And I
don't
did
think
warn
it's
you
true for
that
Harp,
this was going to
actually.
come back to haunt us.
I just want to correct that. This isn't true of Harp. I think he was playing devil's advocate for the most part.
Yeah,
We should
I
have
don't think
Harp explain to Sin Cleanser the answer from earlier's discussion.
Joking, right? Harp was as bad as Arwen in that regard. Even when he was fighting for a cause he doesn't necessarily fully believe in, he still didn't concede either. No difference. Like I
Hold
say,
on, Nathan. What was
hold on,
the
Neil,
question
hold
you
on.
asked him?
So it's a case in point. It's a brilliant example if I use Arwen rather than Harp to be less antagonistic, because Arwen will know where I'm going. So when Arwen's fighting devil's advocate as Baldwin, right, even when a position he knows is flawed and knows is a losing position gets shown to be wrong, the instinct is to still rumpus the point and chant your claim again. That's just human nature.
No, not chant the claim again, to clarify, because you must have misunderstood.
You see, he's sitting right on cue. So, yeah. And also throwing an ad hom that you don't understand. Very subtle, Arwen, very subtle.
Okay, but I wanted to say, what was the question you asked him? When the gas particle is going up, you asked him what bias does it have down, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I went on mute and I asked the two guys that work with me the same question, and both of them said none.
Then you know you have a win. Why worry about those people? My goodness.
Yeah, that's why
That's
I
the
spent.
win.
That was the point that I spent 10 minutes demanding a concession. Because I'm right. But I didn't get one. Right?
Correct.
Well, if
you didn't get a concession.
If you ignore the meaning of words, then you can keep arguing.
And that's what they do, very literally. Even when I literally beg them to paraphrase back my rebuttals, they'll give me a one-word answer. I have repeated it back. Expands. No, that isn't my rebuttal. That's one word.
Well, there's a very similar thing in the Discord chat on Saturday after you went. QE hung about for a bit, and I kind of tried
last
to
Saturday?
play.
Right.
Yeah, you was there, Alwyn.
Yeah.
I tried to play moderator for a bit as we just tried to progress this point. I think it was with Data and somebody with a Theo offer his name. And literally, QE just quit after half an hour, went to archery, I think. Because I'm playing moderator and literally just pulling it back just to ask them for the description of scientific theory. Yeah. And it was just infuriating. Yeah. And after QE went, it then descends into what you're saying, which is just rambling, to put simply, of other people's words that they don't understand, that they've watched on a YouTube video, to the point that they were bringing up dielectrics and one of them, well, see what you prove what you're on about. Demonstrate that E equals MC squared doesn't work in magnetics. No, that was a trigger because I watched a lot of stuff. right? He then went on and goes,
bullying.
I can show you how this point, this fixed point, no energy point works here. And then I suddenly realised what he's on about. And these are guys that have no idea what they're on about themselves. They go off and watch other people's stuff on magnetics and learn to parrot this crap. But when you actually ask them to explain it or point out that you've watched the same video, yeah, I watched Dr. Cheese, the Navy guy, do the same thing. And he's got a similar Ken Wheeler thing. He opposes Ken Wheeler. I think he would call Ken Wheeler wrong. But this is the next thing that's coming in. But they're not coming in with anything they can substantiate or explain to you. All they've got is this chanting that follows, that every time you ask for a bit more inquiry, you're being obstructive, or it requires another chantment of that incoherent stuff that comes out. And it's exceptionally frustrating. And it's very rude, because I think they know what they're doing. Because at no point are they able to explain the point.
Yeah,
Well,
they know they're cornered.
Yeah,
Exactly. Sinclair in the pre-show knew he was cornered. And the moment he knew he was cornered was when he chuckled at me, had a little laugh. He knows he's got nowhere to go. But because he knows he's being obstructive, and that's the only route he's got, it's a bit of a snigger when you called on it. Yeah, I'm not going to answer this, am I? Let's think of another thing that I can distract away from it with. That's what their brain tells them to do. Well, that's infuriating. Now, I'll just lose my temper, but of course the problem with that for an audience member that's uninitiated is that they look at it and go, well, Nathan's being unreasonable. He's getting more and more angry and demanding this and that and the other. It's like, what, a concession when I'm right? Yeah, I don't see any reason why not to. I'm right. He's wrong. He's poisoned the audience's ears with crap about things that are going up actually having a downward bias. It's nonsense. Well, once you've done that and they're just like, nah, I'm not going to concede that. I'm going to repeat it 10 more times, though, ignoring everything you've said. And even if you beg me to repeat back the rebuttal in full, I'm not going to do it. I'll say 1 or 2 words of it and then chant the same thing again for an 11th time. That's what you get. Extremely infuriating, Adam. Absolutely correct.
It turns
fine on your
political.
show. Just want to say, he's fine on your show because you're in charge. You're doing it, and there is a point to it. But when you're not on a show and it's not going out there, it's very little point. I've got no desire to take him to that 9th, 10th point. What I did try to point out to Righteous as he popped in was this is the bullshittery that's ruining the Discord, because the mods need to deal with this kind of stuff because it's just destroying the conversation. Now, we have chats, me, Brian, the guys after the after show, and they get very, very heated. Yeah, we ad hom each other, yeah, at times, but all the time we're not trying to pull the wool over each other's eyes. We're discussing genuinely, and when we're challenged, we do our best to explain to the others our point, not what's going off here with other flat earthers. Just flim flam with your new religion that you can't verify or anything, and it's getting very noticeable. And I appeal to Righteous on Saturday to listen to it, because it is. Like I say, if you're doing it in the show, there's a point in you carrying on, but I'm not spending my time there doing chatting like that, because it's not genuine. It's as disingenuous as when you're talking with the ballers, and it's very noticeable. Rant over.
That's why I stopped going at him. Like I don't even mess around with Discord hardly anymore. That's exactly why I stopped going.
Exactly. To speak to Neil, in terms of what I see as value in this regard, when people nag me and say, you're not in the real trenches, you're not here when your live show's not running, and you don't get the same reactions from people when you've got a live show running. It's like, I don't want to be around when the show's not running, because that's the point of the show, to disseminate the information out to an actual audience. Because as has just been said by Adam and John, when you're into it and there's nobody actually listening other than the people around you, and they're not there to listen to you or paraphrase back your responses, they're just there to chant, then there is really very little point in doing it. So you go, well, if I'm going to be like Fonz, I'm not going to be sitting here repeating the same thing 10 times, when it's definitely not going to get through and I get a chuckle from the respondent. But with an audience listening, it's well worth it, because they get to see how unreasonable the person is. Unfortunately, like I say, I descend into seeming verbally unreasonable in an attempt to get a concession. But what I also do, to speak to Adam's previous point, was I will typically, more than once, paraphrase back to the best of my ability what I'm about to take apart. Sometimes with quotes, sometimes with verbatim quotes of the person's claim, given to them prior to the actual annihilation. Now, normally when I try to do that, that is to say summarise their point, they'll interrupt before I actually get to the rebuttal itself. No, what I mean by that is blah, 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 and they'll talk straight through you when all you're doing is summarising what you've just listened to 30 seconds earlier for probably a prolonged period of time. A 5-minute waffle about nonsense they've watched on a YouTube video they don't really understand. And then when you get to the, okay, I'm just going to summarise what you've said and then take it apart. Now, I don't normally add that step as well because I expect people to just listen back to me saying what they've just said to me and accept that that's what they've said. More times than not, they'll actually find an objection at that stage. That is to say, I'm summarising back what they've said verbatim, and they'll go, no. The words I use when describing that won't work when I come to this other aspect of what I'm going to describe now. So I'm going to disagree with my own bloody words before you've refuted them, because at this stage, I know I'm going to double speak later. So technically, I've got to disagree with your summary of my own words at this stage. So you don't even get to the rebuttal. But my point is that I'm summarising their argument to demonstrate to both them and the audience that I do listen and do understand what it is they're claiming, how they're claiming it, and then go on to refute it. Normally chanted through, shouted at through, ignored completely. And then when the return comes, it doesn't come with, well, I understand your rebuttal. You're saying that my summary is wrong for this reason and that reason, but it isn't because that never happens ever.
Well, they'll say you don't. They'll say you don't understand. That's what they'll say.
Yeah, you don't understand. Not your rebuttal that blah, blah, blah and XYZ isn't correct because just you don't understand my claim. Here's my claim 9 more times.
Exactly. No, that's where I lost it. And I'll quote the point again. So we're discussing dialectics and just any evidence for it. And when I'm going through it, one of the rebuttals was, well, you explain then why, like I said, magnetics disproves E equals mc squared. And I won't bore you with it now, but I watched the video. But you put it back to them to just clarify. And they don't understand what they're saying. They're not able to put it into words, what they then challenge on, because they don't understand it. It's not there for learning. They're not there to share some knowledge with you. They're there to try and either confuse or inflate their own ego that they think they're some new high priest of some hidden knowledge. And it's exceptionally noticeable, the different attitudes.
It's complete wank. Oh, right. Yeah. So now you found out something that the Western world doesn't know. You're going to go forth from that as some bloody self-professed guru in nonsense and then go around spurting it based on the crap you've watched from YouTube when you haven't actually assessed what's being claimed or any issues with what's being claimed. You don't even understand what's being claimed, but you obviously know better than everyone, and you're in this privileged position to know it. Therefore, you're going to bark it at the people that actually know better, like Adam, in this respect, when it serves him no benefit to affirm your lack of understanding in your own claim in the first instance to then take it apart. It doesn't serve Adam any benefit whatsoever, does it, Adam?
Not in the slightest. And what I will just there's a good time. I spent 3 hours midweek chatting with Flat Arthur in one of the Indian Discord channels. And what a difference. It was still heated at times. You're bloody dickhead. The odd time to each other and stuff like that. But it calmed down. But always people were, again, trying to make a point and trying to explain this point to other people, not rage at them. There was a couple of times where somebody, you should watch this video. And it's as it Arthur pointed out, don't come here and do that to people. Yeah, that's just exactly what it is, a kind of baller attitude. But I say it was a very noticeable difference. It was still passion in the room, but the purpose of the room felt very different, is what I'd say.
Right, and when come here and do that, I think you mean Discord, because in terms of people coming here and doing that, it's a very different tale. You know, there's a very different purpose in terms of people having it laid down on tape. Metaphorically, I know it's digital now, but you know what I mean? Actually getting it dedicated to air and having people relive that experience, that's useful. But in a Discord server when no one's recording and it doesn't really matter, although they may always be recording, there's, on the off chance, there's no benefit. Because all you're doing is taking somebody that doesn't really understand their own belief. They've then got it and decided that it's true, but also decided that they're going to go out and punt it. It's like, you've got to be cautious. At the beginning of the debates, when all of us here, I'm going to speak for everybody, I hope, if you disagree, feel free, but all of us were less educated in this subject when the debates began. And a lot of us seemed, at least if you go back and check, a lot more humble. And that is to say that because we didn't know, we were like, I don't know. And therefore, let's investigate and debate about it. That was one of the reasons why I did the show, pick the format. Because I knew that it would lead me to a better understanding of it. But you're not going to get there if you're completely closed off to anything you ever hear ever. You know, actual challenge to the thing that's being presented, based on an understanding of what's been presented first. That's how things progress your knowledge. Now, that's why it's very useful to go back to some of those old debates and see how it goes moving forward. But back then, we were more humble because we were more ignorant. Now, it may appear to the untrained that now we're far less humble. Yeah, you damn skippy we're not. Because we don't need to be humble. I don't need to be humble about what I know and don't know. I just know it. That's it. What's to be humble about? Now, if that's obviously, just contextualise that, when it's in this setting, right, while we're being debated, this isn't the case when you're walking out on the street. You know, it's totally different.
I was about to challenge you.
Exactly. Here, when you've got some fundy chanting that gravity's real, that's what I'm talking contextually. Hey, Chocolate, good to have you.
Good morning. Good morning.
I was just on that point of interruption. Yes, here and when dealing with fundies and stuff, but actually, when I go into like Discord rooms like on Saturday, I am more humble. I want to be humble because I'm there because I am humble. Because if somebody's bringing up this dielectric stuff, there's something in it, whether it's to do with up and down or whatever. These are effects, and I'd like to know more about them. And that's why I try to engage. That's why I chatted with Bob and Zach for so long on it, even though, and kept listening and keep trying to learn it. And I am, because this journey does make you individually very humble. I sit in a much more humble position about what science tells me now about reality than what I used to think it did. So I would put myself in a much more humble place like that in terms of an openness to new ideas like that. But it doesn't mean just because somebody says it is, I'm happy to accept it. As soon as somebody says it is, I want to know why, just like I do with everything else that has become facts and that would allow me to be less humble in a kind of debating environment. But I'd only be less humble with those facts. Other stuff, I still want to learn because I don't bloody know either. I can recognize that they don't know when they try to explain it, but I'm humble enough to know that I don't know and there could be something in it. So teach me is why I bother to go into those forums, but it doesn't appear to be their modus operandi of being there.
Right, it's not reciprocated.
May I interject?
You can, but after the live show's been rounded out by me, because if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you. Smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the join button, all that good stuff. Speaking of hitting the join button, if you did want to watch that interaction between Synclenser and myself in regards to incoherent dielectric acceleration and a downward bias, then you're going to have to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 member, as that comes out on Wednesday of this week. So be here or be sphere on the members only stream that'll be uploaded in a couple of hours time. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!